Cowboy bathed in the wrong river, Apache chief. Whoever bathes in this water will marry my daughter Ader. The river was colder now, colder than he expected. It was almost as though it was drawing him in. The sound of the ripples seemed to grow louder in his ears, almost like chanting. There was no fear in his heart, only curiosity and a sense of peace. Rhett didn't realize it, but he was already stepping into something that would change his life forever. As he stood there, waist-deep in the water, he felt a rush of energy surge through him. It was like an electric current running through his veins. His breath quickened, and the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He tried to pull away, but the current seemed to hold him there. It wasn't painful, more like an overwhelming sensation, a pull deeper than just the water. In the distance, hidden behind a rocky outcrop, a group of figures watched. Hours later, Rhett found himself standing at the edge of the river, the strange glow slowly fading. The whispers in the air quieted down and the water returned to its calm, natural state. He couldn't explain it, but something in him had changed. He shook his head and put his boots back on, not knowing why his heart was still racing. As he turned to leave, he noticed movement on the horizon. Figures, cloaked in shadow, emerging from the rocks. They were tall, dressed in elaborate robes that seemed out of place in the desert. Rhett's hand went to the holster at his side, his instincts kicking in, but the figures didn't seem to threaten him. Instead, they moved with purpose, as though they knew exactly where he was and why he was here. The leader of the group stepped forward, a man with a tall headdress, beads, and a long, flowing cloak that rippled in the desert wind. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, with the wisdom of a leader who had seen many battles. "You have bathed in the sacred river," the man spoke, his voice deep and commanding. Rhett looked at him confused. "Sacred river?" The man nodded. "This is the river of prophecy, the river of the Apache. Whoever bathes in its waters shall marry my daughter." Rhett stared at him, unsure if he was hearing things correctly. Marry his daughter? He had no intention of marrying anyone. He had enough trouble keeping his own life in order, let alone involving himself in some foreign customs. But the seriousness in the man's eyes left no room for doubt. "Who are you?" Rhett asked, still bewildered. "I am Chief Tonka," the man replied. "And you, Cowboy, are the one chosen by the river. I have waited for this moment." Before Rhett could respond, the chief's warriors surrounded him, their gazes steady and unreadable. The tension in the air was palpable. This wasn't a coincidence. The river's glow, the pull he had felt, everything had led him to this moment. But why him? Chief Tonka stepped closer, his voice heavy with tradition. "The prophecy says that the one who bathes in this water will become one with our tribe. You are bound by fate, and now you must face what has been set before you." Rhett's mind raced. He wasn't sure if he believed in prophecies or fate, but he was starting to understand that there was more to this river than just water. The Apache were no strangers to ancient rituals, and the way they looked at him made it clear. Something had changed the moment he stepped into that river. As Rhett faced the chief, he knew one thing for certain. His life on the frontier was never going to be the same again. Rhett Calhoun was still trying to make sense of what had just happened. The strange, glowing river, the powerful energy it had drawn from him, and now, standing face to face with Chief Tonka, he had no idea what was coming next. It all felt like a dream, but the heat of the desert sun on his skin told him it was all too real. The Apache warriors encircled him, their eyes watching him closely. They didn't seem threatening, but their presence made it clear that they weren't there to let him go easily. The chief, tall and imposing, with his headdress of feathers and beads, stepped forward again. "You've bathed in the sacred river," Tonka repeated, his voice steady and commanding. "By the law of our people, you are now bound to our tribe." "And you are bound to my daughter, Ayanna." Rhett's mind whirled. Marry his daughter? He couldn't even wrap his head around the idea. This wasn't the world he knew. He was a cowboy, a drifter who had seen more trouble than he cared to remember. The idea of being tied to a tribe, let alone marrying someone, seemed like something out of a tall tale. "I'm sorry," Rhett said, shaking his head. "I don't know what this prophecy is all about, but I didn't come here looking for anything like that. I just bathed in the river." Tonka raised an eyebrow. "The river does not call without reason. It chose you, Cowboy. You are now part of our future." Rhett stood there, his heart racing. He didn't want any part of this, but there was something about the way the chief spoke, like this was beyond him, beyond anyone's control. Something about the energy in the air told him that whatever was happening was meant to happen. The warriors shifted as if waiting for the next step. The tension was thick, like the calm before a storm. "If you wish to leave, you are free to go," Tonka continued, his voice softening. "But know this, the river has chosen, and the spirits of our ancestors will not forget it." Rhett looked at the chief, the warriors, and the river that had pulled him into this strange destiny. He didn't know what to do, but something inside him told him he had to stay. For now. He couldn't just turn his back on these people, especially with the weight of their beliefs pressing down on him. After a long moment, he spoke. "I don't want to disrespect your people, but I don't understand any of this. I came here as a stranger. I'm no one special. I'm just a cowboy trying to survive." Tonka looked at him, his gaze penetrating as if searching for something deep within. For a moment there was silence, and then the chief spoke again. "The river chooses its own. You will stay with us, and in time, you will understand. You will learn what this means." Rhett didn't argue. He didn't know what else to say. As he looked at Tonka, he saw a strength in the chief's eyes that he could not ignore. And when he looked at the warriors, he saw no fear, only respect. Respect for the river, respect for their traditions. It was clear that this was serious, not some passing moment of superstition. "Where is she?" Rhett asked quietly, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Ayanna? Your daughter?" Tonka nodded. "She will meet you soon." As if on cue, a figure appeared from the edge of the camp, a woman with a presence that instantly caught Rhett's attention. She was tall, with dark hair tied back in braids, and her eyes were sharp like the desert itself. Her movements were graceful yet commanding, and Rhett could tell right away that she was no stranger to strength or leadership. This was Ayanna, the woman who was now somehow tied to his fate. She walked toward Rhett with purpose, and when she stopped in front of him, her eyes met his. There was no warmth in her gaze, but there was no hostility either. Just an unreadable calm. "You've bathed in the river," Ayanna said, her voice low but clear, "and now you are bound to me." Rhett swallowed hard. He wasn't sure what he expected, but this wasn't it. He had thought that maybe there would be an apology, or perhaps a conversation about what was really going on. But Ayanna's words didn't seem to ask for anything. She spoke as if this was simply a fact of life. "I didn't choose this," Rhett said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I didn't ask for any of this." Ayanna studied him for a long moment before she spoke again. "No one asks for this," she replied, her voice tinged with a mixture of bitterness and resignation. "But the river has spoken. We are bound by its will, whether we want to be or not." There was something in her voice, something that told Rhett she wasn't just saying words. She had accepted this prophecy long ago, and she didn't look pleased about it. He could feel her eyes on him, sizing him up, judging him. Ayanna was no passive woman. She was strong, fierce, and unyielding. This wasn't some arranged marriage that could be easily dismissed. "So what happens now?" Rhett asked, unable to keep the edge of frustration from his voice. Ayanna's lips tightened. "We follow the path set before us. I will lead, and you will follow. And together we will see what the river has in store." Rhett didn't know what to make of that. He didn't know if he could follow anyone, let alone someone like Ayanna. She was the daughter of the chief, the heir to a legacy he couldn't even begin to understand. But the more he looked at her, the more he realized something. This wasn't just some story he could walk away from. He had been pulled into something much larger, something that wasn't just about him anymore. He was now part of a much bigger picture, whether he liked it or not. The chief stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Tonight, you will stay in the council tent. Tomorrow, the trials will begin." Rhett looked at the chief, then at Ayanna. He didn't know what these trials would entail, but he could guess they weren't going to be easy. He had a feeling that the next few days would determine the fate of more than just his life. It would determine whether he could live up to whatever prophecy had chosen him. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that this was only the beginning. Rhett Calhoun woke up to the sound of the desert wind sweeping through the camp. The night had passed quietly, with only the occasional murmur of the warriors' voices drifting in from the shadows. He hadn't slept much, his mind racing with thoughts of the prophecy, the river, and Ayanna. Today he was supposed to face the trials set before him. He didn't know exactly what they would be, but his gut told him they wouldn't be easy. In a place like this, the Apache didn't do things half-heartedly. If he was going to prove himself, he had a lot to show, and he wasn't sure if he was ready. As the first light of morning broke over the horizon, Chief Tonka approached him. The chief's face was serious, his eyes as unyielding as the desert rocks. "The trials begin today, Cowboy," Tonka said, his voice deep and steady. If you are to stand as my son-in-law, you must prove yourself worthy. The river may have chosen you, but it is your actions that will seal your fate." Rhett nodded, trying to keep his nerves in check. He had faced countless challenges in his life, from duels to dust storms, but this was different. The pressure to succeed felt heavier than anything he'd experienced before. Tonka continued, "You must complete 3 tasks, one of strength, one of wisdom, and one of heart. Fail any of them, and you will be cast from this camp. Do not expect mercy." "Understood," Rhett said, though the words barely felt like his own. He didn't want to fail, not just for his sake, but for Ayana's as well. He hadn't expected to care so much, but now, standing on the brink of something that could change his life forever, he realized how much was at stake. Tonka motioned for Rhett to follow him. The chief led him to a wide clearing near the edge of the camp. There, the warriors were gathered, their eyes watching closely. Ayana was among them, her expression unreadable. "This is the first trial," Tonka said. "You will face one of our strongest warriors in hand-to-hand combat. Show your strength, your spirit. Prove that you are capable of defending our people." Rhett took a deep breath. This was no ordinary fight. The warrior standing before him was tall and muscular, his eyes filled with intensity. He had the look of someone who had spent his life honing his skills for moments like this. Rhett knew that even with all his strength, he couldn't afford to make a mistake. The fight began without warning. The warrior lunged at Rhett, and Rhett barely had time to react. He dodged to the side, the warrior's fist missing him by inches. Rhett quickly regained his footing, using his quick reflexes to his advantage. He wasn't as strong as the warrior, but he had speed, and he wasn't afraid to fight dirty if it came down to it. The 2 men circled each other, testing one another, their feet kicking up dust as they moved. Rhett knew he had to keep his cool. He couldn't let his emotions control him. This fight wasn't about winning. It was about proving that he could hold his ground. The warrior swung a heavy punch, but Rhett ducked, sweeping his legs out from under him. The warrior fell hard to the ground, but before Rhett could strike, the man quickly recovered, pushing Rhett back with a powerful shove. Rhett stumbled but stayed on his feet. He knew he had to finish this. He could feel the eyes of the tribe on him, the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. In one swift move, Rhett tackled the warrior to the ground. He pinned the man's arms down, using his legs to hold him in place. The crowd fell silent as the struggle ended, Rhett's chest heaving as he caught his breath. Tonka nodded, a slight approval in his eyes. "You have strength, but strength alone is not enough." Rhett stood up, helping the warrior to his feet. The 2 men exchanged a brief nod of respect before the warrior stepped back. "Now the second trial," Tonka continued, "wisdom. You will face a challenge of intellect. You will answer the riddle of the elders." Rhett's mind raced. He hadn't prepared for this. He was a cowboy, not a scholar. But he wasn't about to back down now. The elders approached, their faces serious, their eyes watching closely. One of them, an older man with a long beard, spoke. "Here is the riddle," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "I have cities, but no houses. I have forests, but no trees. I have rivers, but no water. What am I?" Rhett blinked, trying to make sense of the words. A riddle? He scratched his head, thinking hard. His mind wandered to maps of the frontier, to the distant planets he had visited. Then it clicked. "A map," he said, looking up at the elders. "The answer is a map." The elders nodded, murmuring in approval. Tonka's gaze softened ever so slightly. "You have wisdom, cowboy.
But the final trial will test your heart. The trial of heart is the most difficult."
"It is a test of your character." Ayana stepped forward then, her eyes locked on Rhett's. She stood tall, her posture as strong as her spirit. "This trial is not one of physical strength or intellect," she said, her voice clear and firm. "It is a trial of what lies within. You must prove that you can lead not just with strength, but with compassion. You must choose one of us to help. Your decision will determine whether you are worthy of the tribe." Rhett looked around, seeing the faces of the warriors, the elders, and Ayana. This was the moment that mattered most. He had already shown his strength and his wisdom, but this trial would determine what kind of man he truly was. Without hesitation, Rhett stepped forward, looking at the group. "I choose to help Ayana. She is not just the daughter of the chief. She is a leader, and she deserves a partner who will stand by her no matter what." Ayana's eyes softened as she heard his words. For the first time, Rhett saw a flicker of something different in her. Hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of something more than just a prophecy. Tonka watched them closely, his face unreadable. The warriors stood still, waiting for the verdict. "This is the trial of heart," Tonka said finally. "You have proven yourself worthy. The river has chosen well." Rhett exhaled, the weight of the trials lifting off his shoulders. He had faced the challenges, and now he was one step closer to understanding what it meant to be part of the Apache. But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The journey ahead would be long, and the trials of the heart, strength, and wisdom were only the beginning. Rhett Calhoun had never expected to find himself standing at the heart of an Apache camp, a man who had been chosen by the sacred river, yet here he was having passed the trials set before him, strength, wisdom, and heart, and standing alongside Ayana, the daughter of the great Chief Tonka. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time since his arrival, Rhett felt a sense of purpose growing within him. The camp was busy, as it had been every morning. The warriors trained with their weapons, the elders gathered to discuss matters of leadership, and the women moved between the tents, tending to their duties. The air was filled with the scent of wood smoke and desert dust, but it was the quiet strength of the people that struck Rhett the most. Ayana was by his side, her face soft with the quiet confidence of someone who had always known her place in the world. She had been his partner throughout the trials, and now they stood together as equals. Rhett had learned much from her, not just about strength and survival, but about leadership, compassion, and what it meant to truly belong. Rhett took a deep breath and turned to Ayana. "What comes next?" he asked, his voice quiet but full of questions. Ayana's lips curved into a small smile. "Now we take the next steps together," she said. "The trials were only the beginning. Now we must work to unite our people and prepare for what is to come." Rhett nodded, understanding that the journey wasn't over. The river had chosen him, yes, but it was his actions from here on out that would truly determine his place in this world. He hadn't just passed a set of trials. He had earned the respect of the Apache people, and, in a way, he had earned the right to be by Ayana's side. The sound of hooves drew his attention, and he turned to see Chief Tonka approaching on horseback, his face set with determination. The chief dismounted with a practiced ease and strode toward them. "You've done well, Rhett," Tonka said, his voice gruff but warm with approval. "The trials are not just tests of a man's strength. They are tests of his character, and you've proven yourself worthy." Rhett nodded, grateful for the chief's words, but still uncertain of what the future held. "What's next for us?" he asked, his gaze shifting between Ayana and Tonka. Tonka's eyes narrowed as if weighing the question. "You and Ayana are now bound by the river's prophecy," he said slowly, "but this is only the beginning. There are those who will test this bond, who will seek to tear us apart. Not everyone is happy with this union." Rhett raised an eyebrow. "Who would be against it?" "The ones who seek power," Tonka replied. "There are rival factions, others who wish to challenge the Apache for control of the land. They will see this as a weakness, a distraction.
They will try to break us." Rhett's jaw tightened.
He knew the ways of outlaws and power-hungry men. He had seen it in the frontier, in the wild west of countless planets, men who would do anything to get what they wanted. But he wasn't about to let anyone destroy what he had fought for here. "If they think they can break us," Rhett said, his voice hard, "they've got another thing coming." Ayana's eyes met his, a silent understanding passing between them. Together they would stand against whatever challenges came their way. They had already overcome the trials of the river, and now they would face the trials of the world itself. Tonka nodded slowly. "I have no doubt you will fight. But it's not just about strength. It's about unity. We must unite the Apache and all those who stand with us, or we will fall." Rhett looked out across the camp, seeing the faces of the warriors, the women, and the children. They were strong, yes, but they needed more than just strength. They needed leadership, and they needed hope. They needed someone who could stand beside them and show them the way. "I'll do what I can," Rhett said, his voice steady with conviction. "We'll make sure this tribe stays strong." Tonka looked at him with approval, but there was a glimmer of something deeper in his eyes. It was a look of understanding, as though the chief knew what was coming. "Then let's begin," Tonka said. "First, we must meet with the leaders of the other tribes. We'll show them that the Apache are united, and that we are stronger together." That afternoon, Rhett and Ayana rode out with Tonka, traveling across the desert to meet the leaders of the neighboring tribes. The ride was long, the sun beating down on them, but there was no time to waste. The future of the Apache people depended on their unity. As they approached the gathering of tribes, Rhett couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. The leaders of the other tribes were a proud and powerful group, and not all of them seemed eager to work together with the Apache. But Tonka was a leader in his own right, and he carried the respect of his people. The council was held beneath the shade of a large, ancient tree. the symbol of unity among the tribes. The other leaders sat around a fire, their faces hard with distrust, but Tonka's presence demanded respect. "I am Tonka, chief of the Apache," he said, his voice firm, "and I bring with me the man chosen by the river, Rhett Calhoun, who stands by my daughter's side. Together we will unite our people. Together we will face whatever challenges come our way." There was silence as the other leaders exchanged looks. Rhett could feel the weight of their scrutiny. This was the moment that would decide whether their alliance would succeed or fail. After a long moment, one of the leaders, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, spoke. "The Apache are strong, but are they united?" he asked, his voice sharp. "And what of this outsider? What does he bring to our people?" Rhett stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't used to standing in front of so many powerful men, but this was what he had been chosen for. He had to prove himself not just as a man, but as a leader. "I may be an outsider," he said, his voice steady, "but I've learned from the Apache. I've learned what it means to stand together, to fight for what's right. And I promise you, this isn't just about the Apache. This is about all of us. If we stand united, no one can break us." The other leaders were silent for a long moment, and then the man with the scar spoke again. "You've earned our respect, Rhett Calhoun. We will stand with you." Ayana's hand brushed against his, and he felt a sense of relief flood through him. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time he felt ready for it. Together, with Ayana by his side, they would face whatever came next. And so under the shade of the ancient tree, the alliance was forged. Rhett had not just found a place among the Apache. He had found a new purpose, one that would shape the future of all the tribes. The journey ahead would be long, but he was no longer just a cowboy on the run. He was part of something much bigger. The river had chosen him. And now he would choose to stand with the Apache no matter what the future held.